Nicole is gonna, thank you, Nicole. Okay, so let me push continue on the screen, and Nicole is going to share the slides, and you have at it.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm glad to be back with you and appreciate this. It's really a great privilege to be here. As George Burns would say, it's a privilege to be anywhere. But I'm particularly glad to be here because I admire what you do, whether you're in person or virtual CASA. I am grateful for this, and what I plan to do today is to kind of take off from where Della started us with the roots and talk a little bit about that. I'm going to use a little different metaphor today, but the goal is, I know this is your peer meeting, so I want to give you something that I hope will be practical, and then I want to back up and let your supervisors handle the peer meeting, and I'll be here if there are any questions or anything. But it may be that some of what we discuss in the next 30, 40 minutes will be part of what you discuss, and it may not, and that's okay. But just trying to give you an idea of what we're going to do. The root part that Della is talking about has to do with the unseen stuff in CASA. Now, I'm not talking about the unseen stuff with your children. I'm not talking about the unseen stuff with their families. I'm not talking about the stuff that most people don't see, and you're dealing with the other professionals related to your particular cases. We're going to deal with some other stuff today. When you went through 40 hours of training, I've not been through CASA training. Della sent me a copy of the outline of what you went through. It is extraordinarily thorough for what it relates to. Of course, a lot of it was in videos and other things that I didn't see, but I was impressed that they dealt thoroughly with everyone involved in a CASA case except one person. And who was that? Pardon? Kids? Nope, dealt with kids. Pardon? The CASA. The CASA. Now, having been a pastor for 40 years, I understand that, as we said back in April, the reason that you are an everyday hero is that you have a superpower. And that superpower is your compassion. But today we're going to talk about your kryptonite. That was not dealt with in any of your training. Now, I know you know what kryptonite is. There may be some younger people out there who may not know what kryptonite is. Melanie, do you know what kryptonite is?
I mean, yes,
Oh, yes, the same way she's heard of 8-track tapes and phone booths. Okay, all right. But we know what kryptonite is because we remember on Saturday mornings getting up and watching Superman. Okay. Okay, all right. But what I want to start off talking about today may seem to be unrelated. You live in a time that is characterized by what is called free-floating anxiety. Free-floating anxiety, what in the world is that all about? Well, free-floating anxiety is a perceived threat that is so generalized you can't make it specific. Now, in the limbic part of our brain, which is the deepest, they call it reptilian brain. There's a little place in there called the amygdala. They're two little almond-sized parts of that inner, and among other things, and they're discovering it does other things, but it has been known for years, people who studied the brain, neuroscience, that the amygdala is where the fight or flight, or now freeze, syndrome is. So primitive human beings, when they were faced with some kind of threat, oh, there is a bear. Well, immediately the mind begins to put out all kinds of hormones to prepare you either to protect yourself or to get away from there. Okay? It's the fight or flight stuff. You know that it's amazing because you've heard people talk about jumping out of the way of a car before it even registered consciously in their mind that there was a danger. And it's just an amazing part of the brain. Now, here is the way that's supposed to work. If I see a bear, or how many of you heard the cicadas in your neighborhoods? Yeah. And I didn't realize that copperheads love those things. And when there is a brood like this every 17 years, you have to be careful because copperheads love to eat those. They will go up your trees. They will be in your yards. Thankfully, we didn't see one in our yard. But if you see one, immediately your brain is going to say, be careful, and will begin to pump out these hormones to help you respond. But when that is removed, that copperhead or the bear goes away and you're safe, then that calms back down, the hormones kind of dissipate. And the problem is we human beings now are living in a state where our threat level is always low grade. The amygdala is always activated for most people, and some people more than others, pumping out stuff like cortisol, other stress hormones, and it never shuts down. Now, why is that? It's because there are so many perceived threats out there. Two researchers in the UK wrote a paper, did a study on news programming. This was back in 2011. And they coined a word, and I've got to make sure I say this correctly. They talked about the catastrophizing of personal worries. So in other words, the news outlets are going to put out the worst stuff and sensationalize that in such a way that you will watch their program so that those people who have run ads on that TV station will make sure that enough people are watching to, you see what I'm saying? And consequently, that plus the fact that we're now in the CNN world where we have instant news everywhere, and we see the first shot of something, we hear saber rattling all over. And then you think about driving to Atlanta. How many of you like to go to Atlanta? We were just talking about how we'd like to get out of Atlanta. So, because you never know what you're going to reach when you get down to Atlanta. And how many of you, especially you ladies, feel hypersensitive, hyper aware when you're walking from a store through a parking lot to your car? Constantly. So all of these things which are relatively, and add the pandemic to that. I mean, my goodness. You breathe and you're going to catch something. You touch somebody or something, you're going to catch something. And so here we are in this state, this constant state of a low level of threat that you cannot identify Why is that important for our conversation today? Let me tell you why I think it's important. Because every time that we deal with that, whatever it is, walking through the parking lot, taking a trip down to Atlanta, coming back from Atlanta, watching the news daily. My wife turns on the news in the morning. I say, oh, you just want to know how many murders there were in Atlanta today? You know, last night. It's just this, all of this stuff over and over and over again. Your body is having to deal with those hormones, those stress hormones that are being, those two little almond-shaped glands, parts of your brain, are pumping out into your system. And every one of us has X amount of energy. It's not unlimited. I was talking to Melanie, I was saying, you know, you may be an 8-cylinder person. You can create that much energy. Or you may just be a 4-cylinder person. But it may take you 1 cylinder or 2 cylinders to deal with the stress that you're dealing with, just undifferentiated stress out here, that low level. Or it may take you 2 or 3 cylinders because you've got that, the free floating anxiety, plus you've got stuff going on in your own family. You know, my 89-year-old mother being in the hospital and having to have a pacemaker and having to have bad surgery. And well, I'm an only brat. So, you know, I was burning up the asphalt between here and Gainesville, and still am, taking her to doctors yesterday, another doctor appointment yesterday. So, all of that is happening before I do anything else. Now, let's take your 10 families, or your 8 families, or your 3 families, or the family you're about to get, okay, with 2 children. And you are walking into a situation where there is already some kind of trauma being experienced by that child or those children. You don't know how much necessarily until you get in there. And when you get in there, you may find out there's a whole lot more. But what I want to say to you is, the thing that we need to be talking about here is, how do you deal with that stress and make sure that you have a safe outlet for that energy, that negative energy it creates, in order that you will be more available to, first of all, we're in a CASA place, those children and their parents and the other professionals related, or your own family. Because stress is stress is stress is stress. And what you're doing in CASA, you already have compassion. You already desire to serve. But you're stepping into something that has stress in it already. You're not going into it because everything is rosy. You're going into it because everything is thorny. Not rosy. Somebody cut that bud off and you're having to deal with the stem. You know, you remember the Addams Family? That's no, you probably don't remember that. Morticia was presented with a dozen roses, but all this, you know what I'm talking about. Okay. Well, we want to talk about your kryptonite today, and I want to move forward and talk about, let's see, identifying and addressing and preventing CF. CF is not cystic fibrosis. Let me go forward here and talk to you about, remind you what your superpower is, and then talk to you about the kryptonite part. Your kryptonite is compassion fatigue. Have you ever heard of compassion fatigue? Compassion fatigue. Well, let's look at that for just a second. I want you to understand what this is. Here is a definition of compassion fatigue. Let me go, there we go. It's the emotional residue of the strain of exposure to working with those suffering from the consequences of traumatic events. Now that comes directly from the American Institute of Stress. Comes off their website. Compassion fatigue. You're walking into a place where you're sharing in the trauma of someone else. Now, when you study this a little more closely, what you find is that there's also this vicarious trauma or secondary trauma that you may not even realize you're suffering. How many of you have gone home after meeting with your children or their parents? You were talking to me, showing some pictures of a place you had to go recently. She gave no names or anything. How many of you walked away from there and that horrible circumstance, whatever it was, stayed with you the rest of the day? How many of you have had trouble from time to time sleeping because you kept thinking about that child, those children, that situation? Raise your hand. Okay. We're talking about the danger here of being fatigued by your superpower. Because again, every one of us has only a limited amount of energy, not an infinite amount. I mean, when I was 18, I thought I was bulletproof and 10 feet tall. Right now, I feel like I'm wounded and about 5 feet tall. You know? At this age, I have a greater understanding of who I am and what my limitations are than I did when I was 18. To understand it, know that the vulnerability that you have relates to showing compassion that lowers your shields to care about somebody. And when you do, it allows that trauma to come past your defenses and affect your mind, your emotions, and that sticks sometimes. So it makes you vulnerable to this. Now, here's the bad news. The bad news is that compassion fatigue may have a quick onset or it may have a cumulative, gradual onset. And that's based upon a lot of things. How much stress are you under already? So is the stress that you're bringing into your life as a CASA, is that the proverbial straw? Are you a 4-cylinder person, a 6-cylinder person, or an 8-cylinder person? That is part of the issue as well. How much can you generate? You may have been an 8-cylinder person when you were 18 and you feel like a 4-cylinder person now. You know, only 4 of them are firing, who knows? But we understand that it happens. It's stress and how we handle it. Not everybody handles stress the same way. Not everybody handles stress well. We may not have been given tools or may not have developed tools to handle stress well. Some people, just by virtue of their upbringing or their personality, don't have the tools or didn't develop the tools to handle stress well. And let me tell you something else. People who are drawn to a helping profession or to a volunteer place that's a helping, a servant volunteer, sometimes are searching for a remedy for their own issues. Now, we're not going to get into that today. But I will tell you, I thought I wanted to be a counselor one time. And I found out that counselors, to be licensed in the state of Georgia, need not only to have a degree, but you have to have 400 hours of supervision before you can get your shingle to hang out. Why is that? Because a lot of people who want to be counselors have issues that they've never dealt with. And if they don't deal with those, you can't take somebody a place you ain't been. You know, you can't lead somebody to a place you've never been. So we're not going there today. Now, here's some good news here. Let me go forward. The good news is that compassion fatigue is easier to remedy and prevent than burnout, let's say. So I want to spend some time today talking to you about what the symptoms of this are, how to remedy that if you're feeling it, and then some things that you can do to prevent it. And that's all we're going to do. Then we'll have some discussion, okay? Along the way, Melanie and Della and I are going to do something here, and I'll maybe be asking you to do a couple of things, but let's move forward in understanding that. Here are the symptoms of compassion fatigue. Now, I want you to look at those. And the first thing you will notice when you look at those symptoms is that, well, they could be symptoms of a lot of things. You know, and here's the other thing. I've seen a couple of surveys or questionnaires online that say if they give you something like this, they'll ask you 10 questions, 20 questions. And if you can answer yes to 4 of those, they say you may have compassion fatigue. Pick out 4. You know, exhaustion, physical or emotional exhaustion. Well, my goodness, you can be physically or emotionally exhausted about anything. Chronic lateness. I know some people who were born late and have been late to everything ever since. You know, and that's not a symptom of their compassion fatigue. But I want you to see these symptoms because chances are you've seen some of these in yourself. And it may have nothing to do with CASA. It may have everything to do with the stress you're under. There are a lot of us here who have been in what we call the sandwich generation. You know what that is? You're taking care of parents on one side, you're taking care of children on the other side. You're sandwiched in between. And your parents are needing stuff, and you've got boomerangs. You know, you threw them out and they came back, and they're back in the home with you, and you just can't seem to get rid of them. And I told my 2 sons-in-law at the rehearsal dinner, because I was performing the weddings for both of my daughters. The last thing before we left rehearsal dinner the night before, I said, okay, Stephen, Jake, I want to say right now before everybody that when you take them out tomorrow, it's no deposit, no return. They're yours, you know. We've reared them to be adults. Now, y'all handle your stuff. We're here to support you. But the idea that we don't want to be a sandwich generation, we may have to be, who knows. But the idea is that any of these symptoms could relate to just stress in your life. It's just that CASA can add stress to your life. So let's move on and let's look at how to remedy this. What are some of the remedies for if you're feeling several of these already and you can relate it back to one of the families or one of the children you're doing that? I'm just going to put them all up here for just a second. First of all, I'd recommend that you talk to your supervisor. And since you have superpowers, they are super as well. I know several of them. I've had a chance to talk to several of them, and they're here for you. It's important to be able to talk to your supervisor because there are issues about your families you can't talk with each other about. There are confidentiality issues that bind you from talking probably even to your spouse about that. You can't do it. You can't share that information. Well, where do you go with all that junk? Well, if you're already feeling it If you haven't done it yet, talk to one of these 3 here or the 2 on the web here. Talk to them. Number 2, the second one is your colleagues. Now, how do you talk to your colleagues? Well, there is confidentiality that you have to be careful about. But without saying anything about your specific case, you may be able to talk about some generalities. I've never been to court before. You talk to somebody over here who's got 10 youngins now. You've been to court a few times. What's it like? What do I need to do? You know? I don't know how to deal with these lawyers. I don't know how to deal with these parents. My training was good. But now this is the water of reality is hitting the wheel of advocacy now. How do I actually do this? Or, you just may say, I'm feeling really frustrated right now because I can't get the parents on. Have you ever felt that before? How did you deal with that? Now, you're not saying anything about the name of the case or your child or the family, or you're just saying, I got this issue. This is in me. What have you done with that stuff? You've hung around for a few years. How did you handle it? Then there's the monthly peer group sessions like this. You can talk in generalities like that with each other. You've got your supervisors here with you. That if you need to, you can see your physician. They are already under confidentiality. You're a counselor, a licensed counselor, is already under confidentiality. If you need to talk about that, you can with them, if I'm not mistaken, yes, because they are under, by law, they're bound to confidentiality, and you may need to find somebody to speak that out. And, you may need to talk to your physician because I'm sleeping. I need something. Sleep deprivation only makes the stress worse. So how do I get to sleep? So, maybe part of it. So remedy. Tell me, have any of you ever felt some of this stuff, the effects of stress on your life? Yeah. So what did you find was the most helpful remedy for you? How did you deal with it once you recognized that you had it? What was best for you?
Wine.
Pardon?
I'm a believer in prayer.
Prayer. Did I hear somebody online?
I said wine.
That's W-I-N-E, not W-H-I-N-E. Wine, okay. All right. Talking to your supervisor. Helpful. Anyone else? Where do supervisors go? Huh?
Well, I shared earlier, I had some past traumas with another job, and I came to a place where I recognized it, and I needed to get it out. And the way I got to that was through counseling. So I went, and it was just processing. It was someone that could help me guide through that. It was beyond what I could do myself because I tried for too long. So.
And for those of you online, Brett was saying that in a different job, he left that job with some baggage he couldn't deal with himself, so he went to a counselor, and that counselor helped him to unpack that baggage so he could leave it behind and not bring it here. And that's my words, not yours, but does that, okay, close enough. Okay, good enough. Well, that's what we want to talk about. Now, I want to get into prevention. I'm going to offer you 3 areas of prevention. Now we're getting to the roots of things. First of all, I want to talk about external prevention. I want to talk about physical prevention. Then I want to talk about internal prevention, okay? So 3 areas here. I will remind you at the end, Della's going to have notes on this, the cells here, And if you want notes later, she'll email them to you, okay? But first thing, let's go forward here to talk about prevention. And with external prevention, a clearing trap. How many of you know what a clearing trap is? Anybody here know what a clearing trap is? Okay, let me show you what one looks like. That's what a clearing trap looks like. You may see it somewhere like a building like this, or a federal building, or on a military base, where you come in and you have to unload a weapon. And what you do is you stick the muzzle down into that leaded thing and you unload it. And if it were to go off, then it is contained there and will not hurt you or anyone else. My grandfather was in law enforcement for 35 years in Bibb County, and they had something like this that was lead and sand toward the end of his career, where at the jail, where the people would come in and remove their weapons and unload them, because if they got around the inmates, they didn't want them knocking them in the head and taking the gun, right? So I think this is a metaphor for things that we need to do as human beings to be responsible with the negative energy that accumulates in our life, because it's going somewhere. Cloud to ground lightning is negative energy finding ground, right? And how many times has somebody discharged their negative energy on you and you were not the reason? And it's because they brought that with them, hadn't dealt with it, and just something you said, something you did was the ground for them. And bam, you got it. Poor dog gets kicked, you know? The wife and the children get fussed at when you bring home stuff. How many times have we heard about that kind of stuff? Well, this is what we want to do, is we want to find ways of dealing with that so that we don't hurt someone else or hurt ourselves. One of the things I'm going to recommend is name that feeling. Now, you have here, Della's getting you a list of feeling words around 5 different categories: happy, sad, angry, scared, and confused. Now, for those of you who are online, Della has that list and will send it to you. I use this list. I coach couples, married couples, try to help them improve their marriage. You know what the biggest problem is in communication? Is we don't know how to talk about our feelings. Well, let's talk about how you felt about that. And someone will say, well, I feel like. Do you know the word I feel like is just a euphemism for the word I think? It's still not a feeling. So, you know, to be admired is a feeling. To be ashamed is a feeling. To be agitated is a feeling. To be awed or defensive is a feeling. To be directionless is a feeling. So the idea here is to give you words that, if you're not used to talking about your feelings, you can look down there and begin to see something that may match what you feel. Now, some of you may be phenomenal at understanding your feelings and expressing them and helping other people to do it. But if you aren't, how are you going to help that child? Because many of the children that you deal with are not yet, their brain is not yet ready to deal with something as abstract as the philosophy of what's going on here. And they can't identify in themselves what they're feeling without some help. Can you help a child understand his or her feelings? Well, you're better able to do that if you can identify your own feelings. Doesn't that make sense? Again, I can't lead somebody to a place I haven't been. So there's the naming of these feelings that is one of the ways that we begin to understand what is the effect of the stress that I'm under. If I can begin to name that, am I sad? Am I angry? Am I scared? Am I confused? Am I happy? Now, we're going to come back to this in just a minute, but that's important to be able to name that feeling. And the better you are at doing that, the less likely you are to have stress sneak up on you, make you unavailable to your family, to your friends, or to your child or children. I'm going to recommend something here. It comes from the book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible, chapter 4, verse 2, which states that, a cord with 3 strands wound together is not easily broken. I've done this with children, trying to help them understand community. You can take a brick and you can put it on top of a single toothpick and it'll crush it. You take 3 or 4 toothpicks, it will hold up the weight of that brick. You take 15 or 20 toothpicks, put a rubber band around them, it can handle 3 or 4 bricks. What I've recommended to Della for you is, for those of you who are willing to do it, not everybody's willing to do this, but to form triads of support and soft accountability. When I say soft accountability, I mean, you're not calling someone to task, but this is what I want to do. Della and Melanie and I are going to kind of role play what that would be like.
Let's come up there so they can hear us.
Okay, so we're going to role play this, and we're not near each other. I'm going to call Della and Melanie and get them on a conference call together, and we're going to do this weekly. We agreed to do this weekly. And the purpose of this is, one, it's not to talk about the details of our cases or our children. It's to do what your training did not teach you to do, which is to take care of yourselves so that you can be more available to your families and to your children, okay? To your personal families and to your children. Okay, so one ringy dingy dingy. Some of you'll remember
Hey.
that. Hey, Melanie, how are you? Melanie, phone's ringing. Oh, there you go.
She had to go pick up her
All
phone.
right.
We're here.
How are y'all doing?
Good.
All right.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I didn't want to take too much of your time, but I want to ask a question that we ask every week each other. Della, what are the 2 or maybe 3 most prominent feelings that you've had this week?
Well, I'm feeling a little bit, when I look at the feeling list, I think the word that stood out to me was guarded.
Guarded. Okay.
Especially about my case, and I guess perplexed.
Okay.
Those would be probably the 2 strongest feelings I'm having right now.
All right. Well, the second question I would ask her is, can you identify which case, or did both of those come from cases?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's because we're moving forward, and I'm just still unsure about what's going on with the mom. I just don't feel like I have all the information. I don't have all the information about the family, and it's really weighing on me because the avenues I'm going through don't seem to be clicking. And then I've got a lot of other stuff I'm trying to do with work and home, and
Working
I
on a
just kind
degree.
of, yeah. So I guess that's just heightened everything up,
All right.
And I don't want to let my little girl down that I'm advocating for.
Then you have these guarded, perplexed feelings about it. Things are not going well. What do you think you need to do to address those feelings?
Well, I think the first thing is I probably just need to sit down with Brett and actually talk about maybe what are some steps we could do for this particular thing. And then I guess probably the other would maybe be to talk to Bob, my husband, and say, okay, how can we eliminate some of the things in our life so that I don't feel like I'm constantly running on 12 cylinders when I only have 4.
Okay, I got it. Okay,
Maybe that's what I should do.
all right, well, what we'll do is we'll be thinking about you, praying for you this week,
Okay.
and then we'll talk about this next week, see how it went.
Okay.
Okay, and Melanie, last week, you said that you were feeling, did you say defeated?
Defeated, yes.
Defeated, and you were feeling defeated because of a case that you're working on right now, correct?
Yes.
All right, and what did you say that you thought you needed to do in the last week?
Well, one of those things was talking to my supervisor as well, talking about the case, bouncing off ideas, and discussing if there's anything else maybe that I could do.
Okay, well, how did that go? Did you talk to your supervisor?
I did, and it went well. We came up with some tasks to maybe complete or follow through with. And then we talked about things to do for myself as well. Yes.
Okay. All right, now I'm going to flip this a little bit. Now, last week, Melanie, in the last role play, talked about something related to a case. But this morning, I found out she has a 7-month-old. So we're going to talk about it.
2-year-old.
Well, a 2-year-old, yeah.
2 and a 7-month-old.
Speaking of stress. Okay. Well, Melanie, last week you said you felt defeated.
Right.
And it wasn't so much what's going on with your CASA cases. It has to do with 7-month-old son who's easygoing, but he just doesn't sleep.
Right.
And you're feeling sleep deprived. And
Yes,
you're getting up at 3
exhausted.
a.m. in the morning and not being able. So last week you said you needed to do a couple of things. What were those?
Some of those things were maintaining a routine, making sure that he is fed well before he goes to sleep, and making sure that we have the sound machine going in his room. But really just maintaining that routine.
How did that work?
It went well for a few days, and then after the few days, we're back to square one.
Oh, really? Okay. All right. Thank you, ladies. I appreciate that. Now,
So how are you feeling?
I am feeling happy
Yay.
because I'm doing what I love to do. Look, you may think, well, what's talking about her 7-month-old got to do with this? It's because we said that stress, even if she tries to compartmentalize her life, she can put the thoughts of that over here. And she may not think about her little bundle of joy at home, but there's one thing she can't do. She can't make up that sleep she lost for the last 3 nights. And she's feeling sleep deprived. And guess what happens when we feel sleep deprived? The chinks in our armor become more obvious. We're not able to handle stress as well. So the idea of a triad is simply for the caregivers, the servants, the compassion givers to have an opportunity just to get in touch in a community of people who are suffering the same kinds of trauma as they are, a chance just to be acknowledged and to have somebody support them. And if I know that Della is going to ask me next week what I'm feeling or what I did and how that went, now she's not going to be ugly about it, but it's a little bit of accountability, because I'll tell you, it's like an exercise partner. I want to get up and go exercise, but if my wife doesn't want to get up and go exercise, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to stay between the sheets. Now, if I know at 1 o'clock on Thursday, next Thursday, that we three are going to be talking, and it's only going to be a 15-minute conversation. We're not going to get in depth, but we're just going to be there supporting one another. It forces me to think about areas that I might not otherwise want to think about. It's a self-care mechanism is what it is. So it's external in that 2 other people are in this with me and are going to be encouraging me and holding me accountable every week to name my feelings, okay? To talk about what I've done, what I think is right. I'm not here to tell Melanie what she's supposed to do. I'm not here to tell you what you're supposed to do. Now, I may ask them, I don't know what to do. What do you think? They may give it to me, but that's not the point. The point is simply, let's name it. Let's take responsibility for it, and let's deal with it, because it's good for our mental health and it's good for our availability to those people whom we serve. Does that make sense? Okay. Well, we're going to move on then and talk about the physical aspects of this. The first one I just mentioned is exercise. Getting exercise is important. How many of you ever used a pressure cooker? There are times when you just take the top off of that to let off the pressure, but you do nothing to turn the fire down. The truth is, there are a lot of fires under you that you can't turn down. You're not in control of that mechanism. The only thing you can do is let off some pressure. And exercise is a wonderful way of doing that. Why? Because your body, mind, and spirit are connected. You cannot disassociate your emotions from your thinking, from your experience out here, so that if I can do something physically to get rid of some of that energy that I have physically, then it will help me emotionally as well. So exercise is important. A relaxation treat. Now, that's a kind of an interesting thing there, relaxation retreat. How many of you actually have some hobby or something that you do? That's great. Being able just to get your mind off of this and onto something else is an opportunity. It can be playing golf, it can be knitting, it can be gardening, it can be anything that you can put yourself into. You know, the word vacare, vacation, is not about doing nothing. It's about shifting your attention. That's what it's all about. You shift your attention and you give your mind a rest. So if you can find something that is positive, then being able to do that, for me, it's going out to eat with my wife and seeing a movie. We love that. That's hobby for us. Now, there are other things I like to do, but that's something we do together. And we enjoy that. There's also, have you ever heard of progressive relaxation? You have? It's a therapeutic modality, actually. What I want you to do is I want you to put your feet flat on the floor. Put your hands on your knees. Now, I want you to close your eyes. Take one deep breath and exhale. Now, as you inhale again, this time I want you to scrunch your toes up. Inhale and scrunch your toes up. Deep breath. Then I want you to relax your toes and I want you to exhale. In your mind, what I want you to see is light in, darkness out. Peace in, calm in, anxiety, fear out. Then I want you to take another deep breath, and this time I want you to flex your calves. Deep breath, flex your calves, tighten them up. Then exhale and release. And feel the energy going out, down your calf, off your foot, out of your toes. If you do that from your toes to the top of your head, wake up now. This is dangerous after lunch. If you do that from the toes to the top of your head, I'm talking about your tongue up against the roof of your mouth. I'm talking about your biceps hard, your fist clenched and release. Your shoulders. What you do is you get the major muscle groups and you tense them and consciously release. And as you do that, literally, you can relax your body. And as you relax your body, and as you think these thoughts, light in, darkness out. Peace in, anxiety out. You actually can change your mood by doing that. If you have problems going to sleep, that's one way. Progressive relaxation. So a relaxation retreat. I have a daughter, my older daughter, she gets stressed, she goes home, closes a bathroom door, gets in a tub and soaks for an hour and reads a book. That's what she does. Huh? So that's a good thing. The next thing, pets. Pets are wonderful. Let me give you the 4 mental health benefits of having a pet. Now, this comes from the Human Animal Bond Research Institute and the Mental Health of America. Number 1, owning a pet, holding that pet, petting that pet, caring for that pet alleviates stress. That's number 1. Number 2, it improves the mood and helps you to fight depression. 87% of doctors' patients say that their mood or their stress level has improved when they got a pet. 87% of those patients, doctors who were surveyed. Reduces feelings of loneliness. I've got an 89-year-old mother, lives in Gainesville. She had a cat that died. His name was King Tut. And she's been petless for about 2.5 years. She got a bird the other day. Somebody raises canaries in the apartments where she lives and gave her a canary. She named him Sonny. It is amazing what that's done for her. She has lots of friends in the apartment, but she talks to that canary as if it were a human being. It gives her a purpose to get up each day, change the thing, put some more food in, put some millet in its little doohickey there, talk to it, listen to it sing. I never would have thought a bird would do that. A dog, for sure. A cat, maybe, though I'm not a cat person. But, goldfish and birds, but it helps. Pets. Improved well-being. There's a sense of improved well-being when you're caring for something else. How many of you have seen that taking pets into nursing homes? Everything from dogs to donkeys. I have seen a Shetland pony in a nursing home. I just didn't want to clean up after that one, but nevertheless. Here is why. It has been demonstrated that owning a pet activates the oxytocin system in your body. Oxytocin is the bonding gene. It bonds us. And when that is released in our body, it has the effect of calming our cardiovascular system, slowing down our breathing and helping us release stress. The scientific research. So go home and walk your dog. I wouldn't suggest trying to walk your cat They don't do well then. But walk your dog, stroke your cat, talk to your bird, feed your fish. Did you know that science has proven that a goldfish, has a longer attention span than human beings now? 20 seconds. 20 seconds. That we no longer have an attention span that goes beyond 20 seconds, many of us. That's terrible. All right, pets. So this is the physical part of it. Physically, you can exercise. Physically, you can take a retreat. I remember years ago, a friend of mine who is a licensed professional counselor, I had him come down to a youth retreat for some youth when I was in another church, pastoring a different church from this one in this community at the time. And he perceived I was stressed. And in one of the breaks, he said, lay down. And he took me through progressive relaxation. And when he got me all the way to the crown of my head, then he said, I want you to lie there now. I want you to think of the last vacation you went on that was fun, and I want you to describe it for me. And it was going to the beach, and we talked about it. I want you to be very detailed. I want you to remember the breeze there. I want you to remember the sun on there. I want you to hear the waves. I want you to hear, whatever it was that made that. And he said, now you have just taken a mini vacation. And if you will do this every day, take your mind back to something pleasurable like that, it will help to de-stress you for a moment. So it's a physical thing. The last thing is the internal or the spiritual side. You said prayer is good for you. Prayer may be exactly what you need, because prayer is taking our concerns to a higher power. Because there are times when we don't have any control, but we just pray, God, help. Prayer. Number 2, meditation. Now there is Eastern meditation. Well, there are lots of kinds of meditation. 2 primary ones I see. Eastern meditation and Western meditation. Eastern meditation is about clearing your mind, not attaching to anything, just clear mind. That helps some people. Western meditation more focuses on the divine, and consequently it is focused on something, not on nothing. But either one of those are supposed to get our mind off of the negative things that are causing us stress. So meditation is the act of, the discipline of looking the other way, away from that which is troubling you at the moment, and looking in a different direction to give your mind, your body a rest. Then there is the mini vacation I spoke about. That's an internal thing. And the last one is gratitude. There is now a whole new branch in the last decade and a half of psychology called positive psychology. And it deals with thankfulness and gratitude. The idea behind it is the more thankful and grateful we are, the more we change our brain. Did you know that we as human beings, because of the amygdala we talked about in here, that's out there searching for possible threats, and the fact that we live with free-floating anxiety, we're already always dealing in some degree with stress out there that does not have a specific target. It's just generalized out here. You realize that what that means is we have what's called a negative brain bias. Let me explain it. Have you ever known somebody that it didn't matter what you said, that they found the negative about it? The 2 hunters who went out, new dogs, and this guy said, I can't wait to show you my new retriever. And they were out duck hunting, had the dog in the blind there, ducks came over, pow, pow, one falls. He loosed his dog out there, walked on water. The dog ran out there on top of the water, picked up the dog, brought it back. He looked at his friend and said, "What do you think about that?" He said, "He can't swim, can he?" That's what we call a negative brain bias. We just naturally look for the worst in anything. And our mind is going to go to that if we're not careful. Now, the good thing about gratitude is the more we discipline ourselves to find the positive things for which we can be thankful or grateful each day, the more we create what are called new neural pathways in our mind. Literally, it is every habit that you have, from me learning how to pick this up and suck this straw, means there is a neural pathway in my brain that from the time I was born till today, I developed so I know how to grip that, how to bring that to the proximity of my mouth, how to latch onto that straw, how to bring a reverse, suck up there so I can get it. There is literally a neural pathway in my brain for that habit. Now, if you can do gratitude long enough, you will literally create a new neural pathway in your mind. Now, the old one will still be there, but you'll have this one, and it'll be available to you. This is scientific research. We could talk about Oxford University teaching people to juggle. Brought people in who didn't know how to juggle, did these brain scans and images, taught them how to juggle. 40 days later, they come back, do the brain scans again, and they have more gray and white matter in their brain. They didn't have to be good jugglers. But it demonstrates that if you do something in a disciplined fashion, you create a new pathway for that. Gratitude is one. I commend to you Ann Boskamp. You may or not have heard of Ann Boskamp. Yes. She's a farmer's wife. She's Christian by nature, but New York bestseller right here. It's called 1,000 Gifts. It's a devotional thing, but she was challenged by a friend of hers one time when she was pretty negative about something and feeling overwhelmed. Find 2 things every day for the next month to be thankful for. 2 things, and write them down. Every day, 2 things. That's all. She said it was hard to begin with, but then it became easier. And now it has become a way of life for her. And guess what? It turned her positively. She now begins to look for things every day that are positive. How good would that be for that child or those children who came out of a horrible home if you can begin to help them look for some positive things? I'm not talking about Pollyanna. I'm not talking about making up stuff. But how good would it be if you could begin to help them discipline themselves to look for positive, because they haven't had much positive. They haven't had anybody to show them that there is good stuff here in the world. Keeping a journal of your own. Not everybody likes journal keeping, I understand. Some people can't stand that, but you could still look for a couple of things for which to be thankful. Share it with, friend, spouse, colleague. Well, how do you deal with your kryptonite? That's the question that I'll end with. I'm going to turn it over to your supervisors. I'm going to stay here, but again, Della will have the feeling list. If you want that, she'll mail it to you. Otherwise, the notes are available as well. So for those of you who are on there, Della's going to come up now, and you can start your peer meeting. And if you have any questions, I'm
You
here.
are our peer meeting.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know if anybody had any questions or like anything in specific that they wanted to ask. You can ask separately, you know, alone if you feel like you need to, but in front of the group. Let's see. Wasn't sure if Nicole had anybody or anybody online. I know, I sent you a message. Liz was wanting some of the research on the animal stuff you did because DFAC's, she's trying to fight, you know, about a dog being taken away, and she wanted that research, which was so helpful. So thank you for that. There's some more practical helps
I will
there.
send that to you.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
website and 5 facts.
Thank you
Yes, I
very
do.
much. Any questions, anybody? Observations? Huh?
I'd like to know more about the
Yeah.
dog issue.
I'll email that to, in fact, I'll do it while I'm not Phyllis.
That's all right.
computer off.
All right.
Let me go
Okay.
in here.
Melanie, is there anything else we need to cover? Because I thought what we would do is when we dismiss, those of you who are willing to give it a try, we'd like to break up into groups of 3 and take our feeling list and see if we could just practice those 3 things real quick. If you're not comfortable, that's fine too. But just it was really helpful just when we were practicing this morning. I was like, oh, I didn't realize that's really I was feeling about that. You know, it really kind of helped me focus in because everything just felt so kind of murky. So that was very helpful for me. So we'll hang around for a few minutes. I'm not sure if you can see that, but he will email this information
I'll email that
with the 5 facts.
with the website, so that you can go to.
I do have hard copies of the presentation. There's a few back there. We'll email the presentation out to you with the 5 facts, the feelings list. Is there anything else y'all can think of we need to include that we didn't include? Okay. All right. Well, I want to close this out officially. We've taken up a good bit of your time. The presentation has been recorded. We'll upload it to our YouTube channel and we'll include that with the link that we send with everything. So I'm going to go ahead and log off now. Bye, everybody online. Thank you.